A machine jams, a demonstration collapses, a room full of physicists goes quiet, and there stands Wolfgang Pauli. In 20th century physics, that scene became a ghost story told in seminar rooms and laboratories. Not because anyone proved Pauli carried bad luck, but because some of the most rigorous minds alive kept repeating the same line. When Pauli came near the apparatus, something broke. That was the joke, and also not quite a joke. Born in Vienna in 1900, Pauli became one of the architects of quantum mechanics and won the 1945 Nobel Prize for the exclusion principle. Colleagues were darkly amused enough to treat even his birth at the start of the century as an omen. He moved through the inner circles of European physics with a reputation for criticism so sharp it could empty the air from a room. In labs, where experiments were delicate and failure was always close, a brilliant, intimidating theorist was perfect folklore material. Experimentalists lived by apparatus. Theorists were often suspected of treating apparatus like decorative scenery. Pauli became the patron saint of malfunction. By the 1920s, stories were already finding him. One version claimed equipment failed in Göttingen when he was only passing through, perhaps not even entering the lab at all. Isidor Rabi later recalled a whole string of tales from the early quantum era. Trouble at a Hamburg observatory, Otto Stern refusing to let Pauli into his laboratory, and a Leipzig demonstration of talking picture equipment that reportedly died in public while Pauli was present. Later stories from the 1930s even tied ordinary car trouble during his marriage years into the same pattern, as if coincidence had decided to specialize. These are not neat lab records. They survive mostly in memoir and retrospective anecdote. But folklore does not need a clerk. It needs timing, witnesses, and a story worth repeating. Then the legend darkened. As Pauli grew older, he became deeply engaged with Carl Jung and the idea of synchronicity, the possibility that events might be linked by meaning rather than ordinary cause. By then, the Pauli Effect had drifted beyond laboratory teasing. Later retellings place one of its most famous episodes at the 1948 opening of the C.G. Jung Institute in Zurich, when a ceremonial Chinese vase supposedly shattered during the event. There was also the postwar prank. Colleagues rigged a chandelier to fall when Pauli entered a room, only for the mechanism to jam. Even the parody became proof. A failed debunking turned into another exhibit. That is where the story stops being about broken hardware and starts revealing the culture around it. No branch of physics proposed a Pauli field. No equation predicted projector failure at one doorway or telescope trouble from one railway platform away. The real power of the Pauli Effect was social. It gave physicists a comic language for the fragility of experiments, the tension between theory and practice, and Pauli's unnerving personal force. He was the man who could destroy your argument in public. Letting him destroy your equipment by reputation alone was almost efficient. The evidence remains inconvenient in exactly the right way. The legend is historically real, but the famous incidents are harder to verify than the atmosphere they created. Most come from recollection, later summaries, and stories polished in retelling. That matters, because the Pauli Effect tells us less about paranormal force than about how scientific communities make myths. Sailors had omens. Soldiers had luck. 20th century physicists had Wolfgang Pauli standing too close to the machine. That is why the story lasted into the 1950s and beyond. It was useful, funny, and ambiguous enough to survive. It let elite scientists speak, sideways, about chance, anxiety, ego, and the suspicion that a person could alter a room before touching anything in it. In that sense, the Pauli Effect belongs with other modern legends born inside expert culture. Stories that begin as communal humor, harden into memory, and outlive the people who first told them. In the end, it was not a failure of science. It was proof that even in the most exacting rooms on Earth, mystery simply learned to wear a lab coat. If you liked what you watched, please like and subscribe. We post interesting and crazy stories from throughout history every Wednesday and Saturday. Yesterday's craziness, because yesterday was crazy too.